Hello, Intro to Art. So I wanted to make a video to show you how to glaze because we are going to be sending a few students at a time to glaze in the ceramics room, and then when you're done you'll rejoin the class. So when you get here you need to know what to do. So in the glazing area there are large buckets containing overglaze. Overglaze is colorant and powdered glass together so that when you put it on your mug it will look matte and chalky and actually not have the right coloring whatsoever. So you have to actually look at a chart to see what color you might expect. But when you fire it in a glaze kiln at 2300 degrees, it melts into a colored glass. Now there's a couple rules on how to glaze these, and the first rule is that you can't have any glaze on your foot or the bottom of your mug up about 1/4 of an inch. And to protect the bottoms, I have already dipped them in a wax. So you might see some wax on the bottom. This will burn off in the glaze kiln, and it's just to protect the foot from getting any glaze on it, because if you do, it fuses to the kiln shelf, because when that glass turns molten hot, it turns almost like a sticky liquid of molten glass, and then it will cool and attach itself to the kiln shelf, and then we have to break off the piece. To avoid that, we make sure their feet are really nice and clean, and the wax helps that protect that. So when you come into the glaze room, you will want to look at this chart. And this is not a perfect system. By that, I mean everything fires a little bit differently. Even just where it is in the kiln makes a difference. But you can see that there's some test tiles here. Our colors of overglaze are a lot of kind of earthy colors. We have like greens, blues, browns, blacks, white. We do have a bright red and a bright yellow that we're kind of trying out that we don't have a test tile for, but you are welcome to use. The rule of thumb is that usually 2 colors on top of each other look better than just 1 color, but you can totally decide how you want to glaze yours. Second rule is that you always need 2 layers of glaze on your mug. These 2 layers are going to be either different colors or the same color. That's just the amount of thickness you want on your mug. When you go over to this little tile area, you will see that it shows you what one color looks like on top of another color. And so you can come over here and say, okay, the first layer was light blue, the second layer was nebula. You can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what that might look like if you layered them together. A lot of it is kind of trial and error and experimentation, so you have to be kind of open to how it might look a little different than what you're picturing. Sorry, I'm trying to get this set. There you go. Okay, so then once you decide on your glaze, you're going to be coming to these buckets and preparing them. Now, when we mix glaze, we mix it with water, and when you don't use it for a while, it separates. So when you take a lid off a bucket, you might see the powder sitting and then water sitting on top, and all you need to do is mix it up. For that, we have some tools over on this counter, and one of them is just a whisk, and we're going to whisk kind of vigorously as we get that together. And then the whisk you're going to immediately rinse and put back. So in this sink we're just rinsing and putting it back. Now you want to ask yourself, do I want to dip my mug or do I want to paint on? The left of the sink here has all the brushes that you can use to paint. So you are welcome to use these. There's some big ones, some small ones, and you would just dip it right in and paint it right on, remembering that you need 2 layers. So if you want to dip it, you could just use your hand, or we have another tool over here, which is tongs that look like this. And then you just take your project and you hold it with the tongs, and then you can dip it in the bucket. If there's not enough glaze to fully dip, you can dip one side and then flip it over and dip another. Alternatively, you can do that for any color. So you could like dip in metallic green and then flip it around and dip it in a different color. You just have to pay attention to how much glaze, like how many layers you have on all of your mug, so that you don't only do one layer. So I have a floating blue right here. I think I will dip this entire mug in floating blue. Oh shoot, I totally forgot. Before you do anything, you have to rinse this with water. So we do that because every time it just sits around, even just over for one night, it gets dust in it, and we want to remove the dust. This bisqueware is what we call once fired clay, and it's also really porous, means that it soaks up the glaze and it sucks it in, and we actually want to take some of the porousness away by first using some water, because it will suck up too much glaze and then you'll get too many drips. So with this, you are just gonna rinse it so fast. Don't let it sit under there. Like a really quick rinse. And you will notice right away it is starting to dry because it's so porous. Then I'm going to take my tongs and I'm going to really briefly dump and pour out, and you kind of let it pour out and kind of shake it over the bucket until the remaining drips go down. Now you'll notice on the bottom that the wax has done a really good job repelling the glaze. That's what we want to keep it nice and clean, but there's still a little bit of residue on there. And so there are some sponges over by the sink, and you're gonna grab a sponge, and I just hold this the whole time. I think it's easier to take your sponge and just clean off that bottom edge so that it is looking good. Now that was only one dunk. So the next layer, I can choose to do another dunk in a different glaze. I can dunk just like the rim. I can sprinkle it on with my brush. I can brush it on like in a textured pattern. I think maybe I'll do that just to show you a new technique. First, I'm washing all of my materials, of course, putting them back. I'm done with this glaze, the floating blue, so I'm gonna put the lid on it. And now I'm going to think, well, what color would I like on floating blue? And I can actually use the chart to check that out. Or I could just try some things that I haven't tried before. I think I'm going to mix it with a different blue. So you gotta read the signs. Or actually, I'll do metallic green. So I'm taking this bucket off. I need to do my whisking again because no one's used it for a while, so that glaze is separated. Rinse the whisk right away. Now this time I'm gonna do a different technique. I'm checking to make sure that the glaze dries really fast on it, but you don't wanna grab it right away. So I just kind of touch it, make sure it's nice and dry for my next dip. I think I'm gonna do like the rim and then some other textures on the side. So I'm just taking it, and I don't need tongs anymore because I can just hold it and dip the rim. And I just kind of shake it off and let the excess drain out. Didn't get any on my foot this time, so I don't need to do that. And then this time I'm going to use a brush, and I'm gonna dip my brush in, and I think I'm just gonna do some like light swipes on it and see if that might turn out interesting. So there's all sorts of techniques that you can use to glaze. Really, the long and short of it is that you need 2 layers of either dipping or brushing on, making sure that you have covered all the bisqueware. By that I mean I can't see any raw clay anymore, and the foot is nice and clean. Once you have that, you are done. Of course, I'm going to wash that brush and put the lid on later. But it looks a little bit like this, but obviously it will not turn out these colors at all. It'll like melt a layer of colored glass on it. Before I do anything, I am checking the bottom. This is all just wax. There's no glaze on there because I already wiped it off. And then I'm done and I just put it on the cart and it'll look amazing. Thanks.